Welcome back to some more of Choice of Rebels Uprising. Last episode, the last stuff we read, we were remembering how we met Breeden in the swamps with a group of fellow people who were upset with all of the stuff going on. And we ended that by telling her that we are willing to revolt. And boy are we, because these people suck, and they're the worst. But thank you for clicking on this video. Please be sure to let me know if you're here because you're actually enjoying me reading through this, or if you're just clicking on it because you Googled Choice of Rebels and this is what came up. And let me know. Just let me know if you want me to keep on reading, because I will if you want me to. But if not, I might move on to something else. Just let me know. I am enjoying it though. So, Choice of Rebels. It's autumn again. We're back to the present during this harrowing that we're at. So let's hit it. With almost all your fellow helots facing the harrower, it's hard to tell one from another, but you're fairly sure Big Radmar isn't in the crowd. You give Breeden a barely perceptible head shake and mouth no. You haven't seen Radmar since Porrick's brutal punishment. He didn't come when Breeden reconvened the meetings. Indeed, you didn't recognize any of the helots in the crowd from Breeden's group of free talkers. Your father clears his throat quietly but pointedly at your side. The last thing you need is to be accused of disrupting a harrowing. Fortunately, Ecclesias Zebed doesn't notice your exchange with Breeden. Entirely caught up in the ceremony, he bows to the senior magician, a tall, slender woman with a close-cropped red hair, exalted Thurge Chirex. The Alistairs give a sharp, rattling salute, tracing the omphalos symbol of the Hegemony on their scale armor with their iron-shod clubs. Chirex nods curtly to them and to the priest. Like many Thurges at this point of the harrowing rite, she looks tense and unhappy. She pulls the small phial of blood from the bandolier beneath her coat. Only through sacrifice, she proclaims over the crowd, can the world be preserved. She closes her fist around the blood capsule, and 6 paces away the harrower whirs to life. The well-oiled gears begin to turn, the manacles snap closed and open again, the keen blades arrayed in the heart of the machine do a flickering, sickening dance like the legs of a suspended centipede. You can't suppress a shiver at this display of thurgical power. Those who surrender their lives for our salvation from Zao are blessed by the angels of Thanos, Chirex intones. Their reward in Elysia shall be great beyond anything they dreamed in their earthly station, but those who selfishly try to save only their own bodies will lose both their lives and their Elysian reward. Who today was found hiding from the sacred summons? Oh boy. When the summons comes without notice, as it did today, it's not uncommon for 2 or 3 people to miss the announcement. Sometimes the whole harrowing comes down to a hapless handful who chose the wrong day to skip their field work or go hunting. But today there is an audible intake of breath from the crowd as the Alistairs drag forward a cluster of 8 bloodied helots from behind the harrower, and an actual shocked murmur, breaking the silence of the ceremony as 5 more unconscious ones are pulled out behind them. Chirex glowers down at the trembling victims. Foolish children, how long have you been conspiring together to hide a runaway helot? Her finger jabs out toward Alice Stonehewer. Ooh, oh no, they found her. You feel as if the ground is plummeting away beneath your feet. The captives include nearly all the helots you've come to know over the last few turns of the season. There's Penn, crouched next to Alice, and the battered Yebin blindly shielding them both with his arms. Ellery is one of the ones who's been beaten into unconsciousness. How likely is it that within moments they'll begin to name others who were touched by this sedition? Breeden, Radmar, wherever he is, yourself. An uneasy mutter stirs the agora as more and more see the captives include literal children, including ones clearly no older than 12. To harrow a cannon-breaking child isn't unheard of, but child murder is a notorious custom of the Eastern Halasurk Empire, one of the abominations that has brought them repeatedly to war with the Hegemony. Seeing the aghast faces, Ecclesias Zebed extends his hands toward the earth and piercingly addresses the lawbreakers. You are all reprobates and rebels. Angels stand witness. Each one of you corrupted by Zao. Age offers no protection when innocence is lost. The angels knew of your crime, the triumphant-sounding Thurge Chirex continues, and brought it to pass that you were caught evading the summons in the very act of succoring this fugitive. Now, only the harrower and Territor await you. You look to Breeden at the fore of the crowd. She is an image of unconcealed horror. Her mouth opens and hangs ajar, as if she were about to cry but had lost all words. I need to stand still to keep it low. I need to stop this harrowing at any cost. Let's do it. You try to ignore your hammering pulse and objectively gouge the odds. The Helots outnumber the Alistair law enforcers by almost 5 to 1. Even considering the Thurge's arcane support, you might be able to overwhelm them by force of sheer numbers. However, you're not sure what it would take to get this crowd of Helots to rally against the hegemonic authorities, even on a much resented fourth harrowing that includes children. You could try to win the crowd over with an eloquent, inspiring speech, though you'd have to make it quick before you were forcibly silenced. You could try to cleverly use what you know of Thurge to intimidate the Thurges and Alistairs with some combination of knowledge and bluff. If the Helots smell the authorities' fear, you might believe in their own ability to stop a harrowing. Or you could simply try to get the full advantage of surprise by physically attacking the Alistairs and hoping the crowd follows your lead. Heart pounding, you weigh up your personal strength, and decide which course has the greatest chance of success. Then you take 3 steps away from your father, inhale deeply, and let's show our stats. Combat. You're an excellent grasp of tactics and fight very well with the staff. Though you can't read, your reason and good memory have helped you acquire basic knowledge of a range of topics. So, fight might be the best. Our best skill is fighting, so let's lunge for him. Boop. Your only hope is to take out a couple of Alistairs while you still have surprise on your side. The nearest guardsman doesn't realize what you're doing until you're almost on top of him. He yells something wordless and amazed, and every head in the town square turns your way. Before he can do anything, you headbutt him in the face. He staggers backward, flailing out with his club, but you stay too close for him to get a good swing at you. Then, before he can recover and push you away, you stamp down on the inside of his ankle. As the Alistair crumples, instinctively clutching at his leg, you grab the iron shod end of his weapon and yank it out of his grip. Then you drive the club into his gut, and he folds over. The people around you scramble out of your way, clearly terrified that the Thurges are about to strike you down. You see your father crouch and cover his face, howling a useless denial. 3 more Alistairs charge towards you. With your advantage of surprise spent, you'll have to fight as well as you ever have to get the crowd on your side. At least you're not unarmed. The club is a far cry from your quarterstaff, but you think you can make it do. You run toward the leftmost of the 3 oncoming guards, deflecting his wild swing and driving your own weapon into his throat. He folds over, croaking, and the other 2 are on you. As you dance backward, dodging their blows and returning a few of your own, you hear cheers start to rise behind you. "Join me," you cry, cracking your club against the knee of one of your assailants. "Together we can beat them." This is clearly too much for Thurge Chirex. You feel yourself yanked off the ground, tumbling upward in dizzy spirals until you're higher than the house eaves around the square. Your father raises his head, and the fury and despair in his eyes you momentarily lose heart. But the alarmed Thurges have acted too late. Seeing you bring down 2 Alistairs single-handed has given the Helots the confidence they were lacking, and the taste for vengeance. As the tradesmen and the nobles at the edges of the agora scatter and flee, the crowd surges forward with an animal-like roar. We did it! Sorta. To your elation, you watch the charging Helots overrun the panicking Alistairs. You hold your breath, waiting for the Thurges to begin calling vitriolic fire to consume the crowd, but the only sign of magical intervention is 3 or 4 more Helots being levitated and wielded as human bludgeons. The Thurges plainly don't have enough blood vials to fuel magic more complicated than kinesis, throwing people and objects around, or to turn the tide of the fight through magic alone. Any moment now, the crowd is going to reach the wheeled platform where the Thurges and Ecclesia stand next to the Harrower. Are you going to try to influence what the angry mob does to the hegemonic authorities? This is no time to tell you anything. Let the crowd decide whether vengeance is appropriate. We need to make a brutal example of the authorities. Every servant of the Thaumatarch who hears about this day should fear us. We should try to execute them quickly and cleanly while we have the upper hand. It is the only just punishment for their crimes. We should try to take them alive and try them for their crimes before we execute them. We must maintain order, or we're no more than a violent rabble. We should try to disarm them and let them live whenever possible. We need to transform the hegemony, not alienate and terrify the people who run it. Ooh, it's a tough one. I don't think we're going to be able to take them alive. But I don't know what we should do. I think maybe it's either execute cleanly or should try to... I see. Actually, you know what? Let's just see what happens. Let's let the crowd decide. You watch silently from the air as the Helots disarm the Alistairs and beat them senseless with their own clubs. It's plain that the majority of the hated enforcers won't be getting up again. Hirio Sebe goes down with a glancing blow to the head. The second third is grabbed from behind while he's still trying to levitate more Helots. He screams as he's pulled off the platform, but 3 Helots with clubs swiftly silence him for good. The terrified-looking third, Chirex, manages to levitate herself just before the Helots overrun the harrower. Their hurled stones and clubs bounce off her black coat without effect. As the fighting subsides, the eyes of everyone in the town drift upward, to her and to you. The third Chirex's voice is thick with fear and hatred. Who are you, blasphemer? My name is Callan Oakfell. Third, you reply coolly. Run back to Shayard City and tell them that we'll have no more harrowings here. Chirex glances down at the remaining files, clenching her fist. She is clearly weighing her ability to crush you or dash you to the ground and still fuel enough magic to escape herself. What do you dream your little rebellion will achieve? She finally shouts, voice shaking. No more harrowings? Thanos be witness, we will wring the blood from every last man, woman, and child who stands in this agora today. Before anyone can respond, she flies away to the east, fast as a stone from a sling. For a moment the crowd mills around uncertainly, then your old friend Terra Abler whoops. On to House Caryatoo. The nobles have bled us no less than the Thurges. It's time for them to pay too. Rough cheers rise up across the square, and another man yells, Sack the market! Take the merchant's silver! The Helots are primed for more vengeance against their oppressors. In another eye blink, they'll surely begin breaking into nearby traders' houses and charging up the hill toward the aristocrats' estates. You are sinking slowly as Chirex's Thurgy dissipates. Anything you shout will still be heard by everyone in the agora. Breeden is looking up to you, seemingly unsure whether to encourage or to attempt to quell the crowd. What do you want to say? Flesh and blood, don't stop, don't loot the town, we're not a lawless mob. Plunder the corrupt nobles, the traitors are no enemies to us. Plunder the corrupt traitors, the noble estates are too well defended. Plunder the whole town, we'll need all the food and wealth we can get. I just don't know enough about the nobles. They seem to be pretty bad, though. I don't think the traders are an enemy to us. But we're no lawless mob either. Let's plunder the corrupt nobles. The crowd roars assent and surges toward the high ground where the aristocrats have their estates. The bright houses and gardens of the lesser noble families were built for beauty, not defensibility, and their owners are all fleeing on horseback by the time you arrive. In the rear guard, a daughter and son of House Tarakatu expertly fire volleys of arrows back at you. At first, this enrages your charging Helot mob, but they can't overtake the noble riders and eventually break and scatter to find cover. By the time you regroup, you have lost more than a dozen Helots and the nobles have escaped. With their masters fled, only a handful of defenseless retainers are left in the mansions. Your mob strips the houses of portable food and treasure, sends the servants fleeing, and sets the tapestries and roofs alight. One of your fellow Helots thrusts a fistful of silver drachms at you, beaming with joyous ferocity. You feel a moment of vertigo as you stare down at a dozen engraved profiles of the thaumatarch. It's only the 4th time in your life that you've actually held a coin, and you've never had more than one before. Despite much bluster and cursing, in the end, no one goes too close to the formidable little keep of House Caryatoo. Even with their Alistairs out of commission, the Aristarchs still have a blade master, several well-armed scions, and a house guard of 5 men armed with bows. From their tall battlements, the bowmen would likely massacre you. Instead, your rebels put the family's extensive barley fields and fruit orchards to the torch. For a moment, you stare out over the familiar landscape where you stumbled behind your father as a child, gathering up the reaped grain, and where in time you learned the back-breaking art of the scythe yourself. How quickly the overseers would scramble out of their enclosure whenever a figure atop the keep wall appeared atop the keep wall. Keep up, you lazy clods, they bellow histrionically, wading into the grain after you. Think the masters will feed you for such piss-poor work? Now, instead of the sting of the switch on your shoulders, your eyes sting with the smoke of your master's property. You shake off your reverie and try to organize the helots, sending some to bury your casualties and distributing the plunder from the lesser estate so it can be easily carried. By the time you're done, the sun is setting red among the conflagration. To the woods, quickly, you say. We'll make no plans where unfriendly ears might yet overhear us. As you stride out along one of your childhood routes into the wild, you can see that the crowd at your heels is a large one, close to 300. Every helot camp in Rim Square is emptying before the certain vengeance of the Thaumatarch. These are your rebels, and every second or third one you see is younger than 14 years. The Karagons cull older helots, and producing many offspring is one of the best known ways to postpone one's harrowing. You've been perfectly aware of the average age of the helotry, but still, in all your imaginings of revolt, you'd never pictured this host of children. Your heart sinks as you try to imagine what it will take to protect them. Then Pin dashes up to you, Alice Stonehewer in tow. Callan, she throws her arms around you, and you can feel her thin frame shaking. There's blood on her kirtle and arms, and she winces as you hug her back, as if her whole torso hurts. But she doesn't let go. You saved our lives. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You wrap Alice into the hug as well, and she melts into sobs. Once she and Pin have both stopped crying, you murmur, "What happened?" We all came to the meeting Breeden called, except you and Breeden and Radmar. The 10-year-old swallows hard. We thought it would be one of you at the door, but it was him, the Thurge. A fierce satisfaction thickens her voice. The one you killed. You nod pensively. And Ellery and the others tried to fight. Ellery and me tried to fight, Pin retorts indignantly. Just because they didn't crack me on the head, you think I didn't fight them? I blacked in Alistair's eye and put an elbow in another's nethers before they kicked all the wind out of me, and we'll keep fighting them now, right? She searches your face. We're not just running, are we? We'll get to fight back. We'll fight them as long as we've got breath in our bodies. If they come for us, then we'll fight them off. For now, let's just keep our minds on escaping them. Let's see. Let's go full-on rebellion. We'll fight him as long as we have breath. Good, Pin says gravely, disengaging from the hug. Hear that, Alice? We're going to avenge your da. The fugitive girl clasps your hand and speaks in a barely audible voice. Thank you, Captain Callan. The two of them bound off into the crowd again. You stop abruptly when you see a large shadowy form burst from the brush ahead. A half-dozen young helots rush in front of you, brandishing their motley array of weapons, axes, knives, staves, threshing flails. Several more stick close to you, scanning the woods around for other threats. Without asking for it, you seem to have acquired a guard. The big man stops and raises his hands. Callan, despite the familiar voice, it takes you a few seconds to recognize him under the thick, half-dried layer of mud. You've missed some excitement, Radmar. Radmar's shoulders slump. Who else? Were the others? No, you cry. Everyone's alive. The Harrower's broken, the Alistairs and Thurges beaten. It's all right, Radmar. It's begun. He blinks, seemingly unable to take in what you've just said. The rising started, truly? Truly, you insist, striding forward to clasp his arms. Where have you been? As deep in the DeRose marsh as I could sink myself and still breathe, Radmar says, losing the smile that he had begun to soften his face. I was headed up to the shack for a meeting Breeden called, but I left the camp late, so I was still 50 yards out when the Thurge and the Alistairs marched down out of the woods ahead of me. He gives a helpless shrug. There were too many to fight. I hid, Callan. I didn't want to die. You hadn't heard the summons to the harrowing? You think I'd have been up there if I had? Radmar spreads his hands. Of course I hadn't. None of us had. He leans in to growl almost inaudibly. None of us who were out there, anyhow. Alright. We're getting things started. So, I hope that you've enjoyed this portion of Choice of Rebels. We have begun the rebellion, the rising. And now we're going to take it to these magic boys. So, say your prayers for the magic boys, and we're gonna go kill them. And please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video if you enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know if you want me to keep going, and I will see you in the next one. I love you very much.